We define ourselves through our history, culture, and food, but we so rarely think to stop and ask, how does it all work? Revealed examines the hows and whys while pulling the curtain back on things you never thought to ask. On this episode, we learn how the beloved New York Public Library came to be and how it served New Yorkers for over a century. A sanctuary of knowledge and history nestled in the bustling heart of New York City.
We're the one with the lions in front, yeah.
The building is an architectural masterpiece.
One of the things that still makes the public library a beautiful building today is that it's built almost entirely of marble.
With collections to match.
We have 15 million books in this building. And then in our collections, we have 12 miles of materials in archives.
To have a collection of this size and scope, it's fantastic.
And secrets around every corner.
You're going to notice there's a series of doors at the top of the library that lead to nowhere. The New York Public Library has not only a vast collection of books, but also it has really interesting artifacts that the general public can see right now.
Its origins date back more than a century.
The city was growing. A public library was seen as being a greater public good.
And today the library continues to stand as one of the most important spaces for free access to knowledge in the world.
Our collecting is so capacious in this institution that whatever topic you're fascinated by or interested in, we likely have some material that can speak to it.
There are countless books and treasures in these libraries you cannot find digitized on the internet, and that's important.
With over 125 years of history, the New York Public Library is an institution serving millions of people each year. Located in Midtown Manhattan, adjacent to Bryant Park, it's a monument to knowledge. But its vast collections of books, manuscripts, and all other sorts of material is not all housed here. It's actually housed here.
Although we're in Bryant Park right now, and there's grass and stone all around us, actually, there's 4 million books under our feet. Roughly 37 miles of rack that hold the volumes of books that could not fit into the building. And that was actually created when the park was redone and the library was expanded upon because there was no more room in the main library branch.
These are the Milstein research stacks. 2 levels of book right beneath the feet of park goers. The park was first excavated to house the collection in the 1980s, and a 2-story cavern was dug that would store the books. It opened in 1991 and later expanded to another level in 2016. Also found in the park, a secret door.
Because of New York City law, you have to have 2 ways in and 2 ways out in case of an emergency. Well, the way in is in the public library behind me, and the emergency way out is actually this hatch here in Bryant Park. They put the names of the city officials and the people responsible for the restoration of the park in the early 90s, making it look like a monument plaque. Down the center is actually a break so this can fold over when it has to open in case of an emergency. It is a secret hatch until now.
The New York Public Library is the second largest public library system in the United States, surpassed only by the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., and the 4th largest in the world. In total, more than 54 million books circulate through the collection today, one that has humble beginnings more than a century ago. The idea was simple yet profound, a library that would serve the growing city's diverse population, providing free access to books and information for all.
There had been, of course, private libraries that existed in the city, mostly for folks who had the bread. But what made NYPL especially different was that it was open to the public and it was funded mostly by private money.
The institution was born from the vision of 3 prominent New Yorkers.
That's John Jacob Astor, James Lennox, and Governor Samuel Tilden.
John Astor and James Lennox were wealthy aristocrats who owned separate libraries only accessible to scholars conducting research. When New York Governor Samuel Tilden died in 1886, he left $2.4 million, or the equivalent of $80 million in today's money, to create a free library with a reading room so the public could access the Astor and Lennox collections in one place. The building would be located in what was fast becoming the heart of New York City, today's Midtown Manhattan, on the site of the old Croton Reservoir.
The building that was where the library is now is actually this 50-foot Egyptian Renaissance-looking reservoir that could hold 20 million gallons of water. It was one of the tallest buildings in New York. It was 50 feet high. It was also a very popular place to promenade. Edgar Allan Poe, when he was living in New York City, he was writing his famous poem, The Raven. He would actually love to walk on top of this reservoir.
By 1877, the reservoir had become obsolete, and it was decided to replace it with New York City's first public library. Around 500 workers spent 2 years dismantling the reservoir.
You can actually still see the walls of it. If you go down to the floor below us, you can see sort of the retaining walls.
So this is Croton Aqueduct Wall, and this is the library built on top of it.
The site was chosen and the funding secured, and John Shaw Billings was named as the library's first director, and he had an idea for what he wanted it to look like. His drawing on a scrap of paper would become the early blueprint for what would become the new library. A contest was held to pick the final design of the library. 88 entries were submitted, and 6 made it to the final round.
The architects of the New York Public Library were sort of underdogs. They were a very young architecture firm by the name of Carrere and Hastings, and were actually employees of McKim, White. They were draftsmen, and they went out on their own. McKim, White were actually in contention to design this, but their employees got the contract.
The cornerstone, weighing 7.5 tons, was laid in 1902 and held a time capsule with contracts between New York City and the library, as well as other photographs and newspapers.
Construction of the public library began in the later 1890s. It was completed in 1911, and one of the things that still makes the public library a beautiful building today is that it's built mostly of marble. The largest building made of marble in New York City. Marble comes from Vermont. There's over 4 acres of it that were mined to build this building. And in a different part of the library, the marble actually comes from Greece, and it's the same marble that was used in the Acropolis at Athens. And if the marble wasn't up to the sort of snuff of the architects at the time, it was rejected and actually brought to Harvard, where it became the Harvard Medical School building. Not good enough for New York, good enough for Harvard.
The building took 16 years to complete. At the time, the largest marble building ever built. The project cost around $9 million at the time. That's over $300 million today. The building was dedicated by President William Howard Taft, and a day later finally opened its doors on May 24, 1911, and welcomed more than 50,000 visitors on the first day, staying open 13 hours until 10 p.m.
It was very popular, yeah. The first day is described as being a huge crowd in front of the building, and people just rushing to get in. People paid attention at that time to what the first book was that was taken off the shelves and other things like that. It was a big deal.
That was Ethical Ideas of Our Time, a study of Friedrich Nietzsche and Leo Tolstoy. 50 years it came to light that the whole first book to be checked out was actually a bit of a hoax.
The story was that the person was familiar with the author and wanted basically to promote the book. So it was kind of a plant, to boost sales.
Today, the book checked out the most is The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats, with 485,583 checkouts as of 2020. While everyone has their favorite read, some of the rarest books revealed secrets that were awe-inspiring to people at the time.
This book in particular, which is a favorite of mine in the collection, called Micrographia. This was printed in 1665. The first time that we're seeing in print and in writing the research around the complex microscope. This flea plate is one of the most famous out of here. And again, I mentioned how you can see how terrifying it might have been for someone in 1665 to have seen an image like this. I've been here for 13 years, and every day when I come in, I see something new or engage with something new, and it can spark another imaginary moment with these things. This is a 1570 book. It is also known as perhaps one of the first pop-up books that has ever existed. I'll look at more material and research it again and again, and there's always something to do here. I always say if you're bored, you're doing it wrong.
With more than 125 years of history, the New York Public Library has expanded with new stacks, reading rooms, and more. and that was a design of the original builders, marked by doors to nowhere.
If you go to Bryant Park and you stand in the middle of the lawn and you look up, you're going to notice there's a series of doors at the top of the library that lead to nowhere. The Rose Reading Room actually has an employees-only catwalk that goes around the entire reading room that has access to those doors, and there are signs that say, "Danger, do not open." Now, why are they there? They're there because the architecture firm of Carrere and Hastings actually had already planned to do an extension of the library, which never came to be because of funding problems.
The New York Public Library has been a cornerstone of knowledge and culture for over a century, and at its flagship location, its collections have been watched over by two famous lions.
The lions behind me are probably, besides the Statue of Liberty, some of the most famous statuary in New York City.
The lions, which were fashioned by American sculptor Edward C. Potter, were initially thought to be named Leo Astor and Leo Lennox after the two founding collectors of the library, but it didn't stick.
We know them today as Patience and Fortitude, but actually they do not have official names even today. Patience and Fortitude was actually assigned to them by our very famous mayor, Fiorello LaGuardia, basically because he felt that patience and fortitude were virtues that New Yorkers needed during the Depression.
The two large cats were carved by the world-renowned sculptors, the Piccirilli brothers, who also carved the statues at the New York Stock Exchange, and perhaps most famously, the Lincoln Memorial.
Now, very important, who's Patience and who's Fortitude? So Patience is actually the southern-facing lion, so the lion all the way behind me down Fifth Avenue. The lion right behind me is Fortitude.
The building is truly a space anyone can use, whether you are a student or an academic or just want to find a quiet place to write and access a unique collection.
We're pretty capacious. We have 15 million books in this building, and that's encompassing all the collections we have here. The main Rose Main Reading Room that most people think of when they think of this library encompasses most of those collections.
The iconic location is nearly the size of a football field and the length of 2 city blocks. Its 52-foot tall ceiling features murals that create the illusion of looking up into the sky. Overall, it is larger than the main concourse of Grand Central Terminal.
We're quite busy. And it's one of the great things about this place is that it is open not just to New Yorkers, but anyone in the world who wants to come in to look at those materials.
The room seats 624 people and has 42 American white oak tables where anyone can pull up a chair and a book. But getting that book is not as simple as picking it up off the shelf. Most materials are stored in closed stacks beneath Bryant Park, so to access what they want, patrons must simply submit a request.
For most of the history of the library, if you needed a book, you'd fill out a form and you'd put it in a pneumatic vacuum tube. Somebody would actually get that book, depending on what department it came from, and used to put it in something that looked like a giant dumbwaiter, which could carry up to 30 pounds of books all the way up and down the 8 stories of the library. Well, unfortunately, the pneumatic system stopped being employed a couple of years ago because they couldn't find replacements for the canisters. It was almost impossible to find. So they did another system. What they created was this really cute book train. What you would do is you would fill out a slip, no more tubes, and the books would come on over 900 feet of track that runs throughout the library itself on these little book train carts. The trains go 75 feet a minute, so it takes about 5 minutes to get a book somewhere throughout the library if you're waiting for it.
Throughout its history, the library has been at the center of worldwide events. After the stock market crash in 1929, it saw some of its largest attendance, with 800 to 1,000 people in the main reading room at a time to stay warm. During World War II, 12,000 items deemed too important were moved from the library's collection to an undisclosed, secure location. The library's collections are so vast and unique that during both World Wars, the military drew from its extensive map collection. The library's map division chief, Walter Risto, was even made head of the geography section of the Office of Military Intelligence. In addition to rare books and manuscripts, the New York Public Library is also home to some more unusual items.
Behind me is an exhibition that's on rotation every couple of months here at the New York Public Library, which features treasures other than books that the library holds, and it's got a little bit of everything in it, including the Bill of Rights now, Shakespeare's First Folio, cuneiform tablets, and Charles Dickens' writing desk.
A lot of people don't realize that we have something like the Gutenberg Bible. We have Charles Dickens' envelope opener that has his cat's paw as the handle of it. These sort of items that are around bookish things too, that are a part of it.
The New York Public Library's flagship location was renamed in 2008 for Stephen A. Schwarzman, who donated $100 million and promised to help start a $1 billion expansion of the library system. It's one of the library's premier research centers, but you won't be taking any of these books home.
The difference between a circulating library and a research library, for the most part, is very simple. The research library materials stay in this building. But in a circulating library, the libraries in our branches, which most people think of when they think of the library in New York City, that's where you can just check something out and take it home with you.
The true backbone of the New York Public Library system lies in its 92 branches.
The New York Public Library, we cover the Bronx, Manhattan, and Staten Island. Brooklyn and Queens, they both set up their library systems before the consolidation of the city in 1898.
Although there were offers to join the system, the Brooklyn and Queens branches decided to keep independent, believing they would not get equal treatment. These three separate library systems within the city of New York exist to this day. To build the branches, Andrew Carnegie gave a gift of $5.2 million, almost $192 million today. Carnegie was a philanthropist who made his fortune in the steel industry. He called a library the best gift that can be given to a community.
Andrew Carnegie, he donated a lot of buildings and funding to different areas that were considered low income, so they can have libraries. So there are several Carnegie buildings within our system.
His gift not only built branches for the New York Public Library, 39 in total, but extended to the Brooklyn and Queens systems, as well as more than 2,500 throughout the world. The Harlem Library on 124th Street is a Carnegie branch that was incorporated into the system in 1909 and still operates out of the original building.
If you go and look at all the Carnegie buildings, you'll see they're like typecast.
The libraries were constructed using a number of styles, including Italian Renaissance and Spanish Colonial, with prominent archways to enhance their appearance. And many were designed by McKim, Mead & White, the firm that came in second to design the main building. Since its inception, the library has been a space for whatever you need it to be, especially in a city with so little space.
If we didn't have the New York Public Library, I don't think there would be central resources for people to do work and research. They use them almost like de facto offices.
The library has grown over the years and, at times, shrunk when facing repeated budget crises, but it has endured thanks to the generosity of the people of New York. One of the most substantial additions to the system was when Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, a writer and historian, gifted his collection of books to the 135th Street Branch Library. That location would later become the Schomburg Center. The center would draw in black researchers and writers from all over, including the world-famous Langston Hughes, who decided to spend eternity at his beloved home branch.
Langston Hughes was quoted as saying that this was like a godsend, that he could come here and be educated and use the collection. He loved the Schomburg Library, and he wanted to be buried at the library.
His ashes are interred in a book-shaped urn in the center of the Cosmogram under a line from one of his most notable poems. While some decided to make one of the library buildings their final resting place, others once actually lived here. In 1930, John H. Fenneler listed his permanent address as 476 Fifth Avenue. The problem was there was no apartment there, only a library.
Fun fact about New York Public Libraries in general, including the main branch building behind me, is that there were residential apartments in them.
Before electricity, all the library's buildings were coal-powered, and they needed someone on hand 24 hours a day to keep the coal-burning ovens that heated the buildings going.
There were actually keepers of the libraries who'd have their families growing up in these apartments, and they were always on the top floors of the library.
It was, and probably still is, the cheapest penthouse apartment in the city. As of 2016, there were 13 apartments left, but none in use. For more than 125 years, the New York Public Library has been a space for New Yorkers and visitors from all over to learn, read, and explore an extensive collection of books and artifacts.
And they come not only from all over the country, but all over the world to see these materials because they are so unique and special.
Whether it's through the iconic marble halls, the hidden underground stacks, or the beloved lion statues, the library continues to be a treasured institution around the world and located in the heart of New York City.
It's a place that makes everybody feel important even when they walk in there, but it's also sort of symbolic of free and useful knowledge. A New York Public Library card gets you access into some of the most beautiful interior spaces and some of the richest resources for research in the world.